Hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about some really nice powder-coated pieces of metal that were made here in the US and sent to me by a company called Oveo. Obviously there's a lot more to it than that. These are really nice mounts, one for the Mac Studio, one for cable management, and one for a laptop. So today we're going to dive in and talk about it and go on a little bit of an adventure. So let's get started. And we're going to get started by saying that yes, these pieces of hardware were sent to me by Oveo, but that was the only thing sent to me. There was no compensation because I don't do paid reviews. And on top of that, there was no pre-copy approval or pre-screening of this video, meaning that they're watching it right alongside you. So now let's dive in to the Mac mount, the cable management bar, and the laptop stand. So we'll start out with the laptop stand just because that's not going to take too much time. That was actually something that I wasn't anticipating them sending to me, but it was super nice of them to do that. And they actually wrote me a little letter saying that I can use it for my MacBook, which is so cool. As little as I used the MacBook, I did mess around with this laptop stand and the MacBook, and it worked great. So well, in fact, that I actually found a better use for it in the office that I work in, where I can use it for my work laptop. So thanks for sending me that. It is fantastic. And the fact that it actually has some little strips that you can use to mount the laptop, or at least hold it in place better, wasn't super necessary on the MacBook, but it was really nice to have when I finally put it on my desk in the office. So that's really cool. Pretty good piece of hardware, and overall I can recommend. Really nice. And steel. Really nice steel. The other thing that they sent me that was made of steel was the channel for cable management. Now, they sent me this because with the undermount stand, apparently something that they were worried about was that a lot of people will get this and not cable manage their desk properly. I am very guilty of that because I have a ton of cables between networking, 2 displays, the webcam I use, a bunch of Thunderbolt adapters, and the hard drive mounting system I use. All of that stuff was all just kind of everywhere. So they sent me a channel for mounting up my cables, and it works super well. And when I went to mount it up, we'll go into that when I actually play the video, but it's held up by 2 screws, which I was worried about, but even now, almost a week and a half later, it is still holding super. I just love it when cameras freeze. But either way, it's holding up super well, even though it's only held up by 2 screws. My only real complaint, I should say, is that because of the amount of hardware that I actually have on my desk that needs cabling, maybe a bit of a wider one would have been nice. Requiring 4 screw mounts would have been fine, just so that I could have a slightly longer channel. As it stands right now, it's holding them well enough. It could use a bit more space, but it's not the end of the world. And the fact that it's got a little hole at the back to just channel everything down and in, and you can kind of loop stuff into it to keep it there, that's super nice, because right now it's holding a USB hub, a 2 Thunderbolt adapters, one from Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2, and one Thunderbolt piece that I use to hook up both my monitors. So it is holding up super well, and overall, the only complaint I would really have with that is that it would be a bit thicker. But overall, the finish is super nice on this thing, and really, I think that however they powder coated or painted it or whatever, it matches super well because it looks the same as the laptop stand in terms of finish. It actually looks the same as the material and the finish that's done on my desk, and so does the star of the show, the Mac Studio desk mount. Actually, it's just called the Mac Studio mount because this thing can actually be mounted on the wall. It can be mounted to the back of monitors via some VESA mount screws, or you can mount it to the bottom of your desk. And all of these options are fantastic, but one of the things that I actually ran into, you'll see, was something they're hopefully fixing later, but needless to say, what was included was good, but not everything I needed. Also, this is actually made of aluminum, so that's kind of nice. I was kind of expecting it to be steel like the rest of them, but it's actually made of aluminum, and I got the one in black. They sent me a black one, which I'm super happy they did because it actually looks correct with the rest of my desk and the coloration of the desk. But they are making them in silver soon, I think. It's not out yet, and they have one available in white. But overall, the idea is that you can mount your Mac Studio somewhere out of the way of everything else on your desk, because as it stands right now, the Mac Studio is insanely impressive for the amount of power that you can fit right on top of your desk. But what if it didn't have to be on top of your desk? What could you do with it? Well, we'll get into that in a bit, but for now, let's go mount it. So I know I normally only cut these little bits in here when I'm doing editor's notes, but what I'm actually going to do right now is try to set up at least the cable management bracket that was sent, or if I have the time, I'm also going to mount up the actual Mac mount, because I'm working from home today. I'm on my lunch break, so we're going to see how quickly I can mount this up. But I guess wish me luck, and to the time lapse. This is not long enough to set the screws, so now I have to find a longer screwdriver. Awesome. All right, we got an old oil-coated wooden screwdriver. And, oh yeah, more than enough space. We're golden, look at that. Makes it all the way to the end. No problem. So we're back in business. But something I didn't check, but fortunately it worked out, is I did the best measurements I could to make sure that the screws were short enough to not go through the desk, and well, fortunately, I measured correctly. What do you know? Yeah, so they mentioned to me through email that they have been sourcing shorter screws to come with, I think they said the white model of this mount, but for the one that I got, I just have the long screws and then the ones meant for desk mounting, so, or monitor mounting. So yeah, I had to get some shorter screws. That shouldn't be a problem for you all, hopefully. I don't know. I'll make a note down there if it is the case still. But either way, didn't go through the desk. We have some cable management, so I think I'm going to spend the last 4 minutes now doing some cable management. So yeah, let's do that. So you're joining me right now on the floor because, well, I got the other piece mounted, and it looks awesome. I'm just going to show you guys before I put the computer in it, and I still have a lot of cable management to do, so forgive the mess underneath, but I want to show you. This thing actually looks super, super nice, and because it's aluminum, it was actually a lot like lighter weight to mount than I thought. This I'm worried about with 2 screws, but once I got it mounted, it's actually like super solid in there. But this has, for aluminum, I used all the screws. You probably don't have to. I'm sure that they'll correct me in the comments if I didn't have to use all of them, but yeah, I'm super excited to try out this mount, and I probably mentioned it already. If I haven't, then I'll mention it now. It's got little holes cut in it so that you can use the little Kensington lock piece that Apple put on the bottom of the Mac, so that's also really cool if you're using this in like a school, so really neat. And I also love the logos trimmed into it. That's really sweet. And yeah, I'm going to mount the Mac into it after I get all of these cables managed up. Oh my lord. So yeah, just one more thing to note about mounting up these things. If you're going to do it, and you also have the cable management channel, which is what I got, make sure to put space, at least if your desk is kind of thin, both like in height and in depth like mine, put them apart from one another so that you don't have the problem of one being in the way of the other and not being able to load your computer into the one, because then you end up with this. Yeah, see those little holes up there? Those are the original mounting points, which were too close to that. So I just shifted over, and I'm screwing it back in now. Oops. So yeah, obviously, if you're not dumb like me, you would actually keep an eye on where things are spatially and not put them so close to one another. But overall, these things are extremely easy to mount. In fact, I managed to get everything mounted within that 30-minute window of my lunch break. So even with messing up and having to shift everything over, I was still able to get it all hooked up. Super easy. I cannot express how easy it was to mount this stuff up. Once I got the right tool, which was my own fault, once I actually put it in the right place, which was also my own fault, and once I got the screws that fit, which I had to do the night before because I was going to just mount it up that night, but I didn't have the right screws. Once I got all those, which, again, like I mentioned in the little clip there, they are supposed to be getting screws for like slimmer desks and stuff, but they didn't have that at the time it was sent to me, which is unfortunate. So I had to get my own, but that's fine. Not my fault, but still, it would have been nice to have. But yeah, overall, once it was mounted up, the thing is super solid. I really don't know if I had to use all of the screws at the top, but I did, so that Mac Studio isn't going anywhere. Or at least so I thought. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the 2 key things that stood out to me as benefits for this that Oveo mentioned on their website were the desk space, which is very true because of the fact that I was actually able to free up desk space and have nothing on top of my SSD enclosure. I was actually able to dust off my old Belkin Thunderbolt hub, which gives me 3 more USB ports, another Ethernet port if I need it, a few more audio interfaces, and it also passes through the Thunderbolt connection from that same port. So I have another Thunderbolt pass-through if I really wanted to. Oh yeah, and it also has Firewire 400, which is just hilarious. But either way, with that extra space, I was actually able to put something I haven't used in years back on my desk in service, and I've been using it pretty regularly. So that is freaking awesome. The other thing that they talked about was that it gives better airflow because the bottom of the Mac where the ventilation is just right there, open to the bottom of the desk, which in my experience is actually quite a concern. I've talked about it before, but I use a base model Mac Mini as my server, and it actually sits on a desk that is right below my air conditioning unit where air is constantly moving around. So as much as I try to keep my apartment clean and dust free, there's always going to be dust. And if it's sitting somewhere where dust can collect, especially with me keeping mine on top of hubs that have enclosures inside of them, dust can pack in there and eventually get into the cooling system, which is actually the case with that Mac Mini. I've had to pop it open a few times now and dust it off. I don't think that dust will never get into the Mac Studio with the way this is mounted, but it is going to make a huge difference considering that just moving the Mac Studio from where it used to sit to where it's hanging now, I could actually dust a noticeable amount of dust away from the enclosure that it had been sitting on. Now, one other benefit to this mount that I came across that was actually just because I mounted it like an idiot the first time and then only moved it over a little bit, so it's still very close to the cable management tray, is how short of a run the cables have to move to before they are kept in a nice, easy storage place. This might seem kind of OCD, but one of the biggest things that I look for when I buy a cable is how easily the cable is trained. And if you don't know what that means, training a cable is when you want it to sort of bend in a certain direction. How long does it take for you to sort of keep it in that direction before it just stays there? And Apple has always been really good about training cables in regards to their power cords. Even the Thunderbolt cords that they include, they are very easily trained. You just bend them and they will most of the time stay there. This Mac Studio power cord is no exception, but every other cord that I picked is that way because I specifically tried it out to make sure that it was easily trained. Now, because of how close I have these two things mounted, the Mac Studio and the cable management tray, all the cables curve very nicely and have a very short run to go. So even if it wasn't an easily trained cable and I had just bought whatever was easiest, I would not have any trouble getting this to mount. So assuming that you keep in mind the narrowness of your desk and the distance that your cable management tray and mount have to stay, you can still get them pretty close, and the curve that you have to do with these cables is super easy and it will not affect the cables themselves at all. In fact, it's probably extending their life because there's not as much strain on them to turn. Super nice. Now, of course, I'm singing all these praises for this mount, and they're well earned. The way that this thing is set up is awesome. The better airflow, the short cable management, because I originally mounted it like an idiot and then figured out how to do it correctly. The ease of mounting, so that even when I messed up, I could still fix it and it wasn't a big deal. The cable management channel, the easy cable management runs, all of these things are well-deserved compliments and praises. However, the Mac Studio mount isn't perfect. There are two issues that I've run into, one of which I have fixed and the other I'm still trying to resolve. So we're going to talk about those now. The first issue was actually how the Mac Studio sits in the mount. Now, it sits well in the mount. There's more than enough space to mount this Mac Studio. It sits in there really well. And I even mentioned when I was mounting it that there's a Kensington lock hole, which is super nice if you're trying to secure this to a desk in an education facility. But the way it's set up has two little bent-in tabs for holding the Mac Studio from going forward. Now, this isn't really an issue if you are mounting it sort of upright, in the case of mounting it to a wall or a monitor, for example. However, in my case, I kind of had to mount this thing with the tabs facing forward, even though the back of the Mac would have been more ideal, because with the way my desk is set up, I kind of have a bar in front of it. So I figured with that bar in front, I'm not going to be able to load the Mac in from the front. I'll have to load it in from the back, so we'll just put those tabs at the front. And that works fine, but the hole at the bottom that's meant for letting the air in so that you can actually get a good flow of air for the Mac Studio is very wide. So wide, in fact, that when I would plug things in before I fixed it, it would sort of rock back and forth. Now, I wasn't ever really concerned about the Mac Studio falling out of the actual mount, but it was kind of concerning when you have aluminum rubbing against aluminum, and especially when you can kind of feel the vent holes hitting where the back of the hole is that's meant to sort of hold the Mac Studio in place by its vent. I was worried about damaging the Mac, so the resolution that I got was to essentially take some sticky tabs, the same things that you use to mount up like wall lights or posters without punching holes in the wall, and I just kind of stuck those at the back, and they are easily pulled out for whenever I need to move the Mac, and they're really cheap, so I can just buy more if I ever need to remove them. But that was my resolution, so that when I plug anything into the front of the Mac, it doesn't shift back and I have to pull it forward. So that was the first issue. The other issue, like I said, is the one I'm still fighting with and trying to resolve, which is that it seems like the metal, the way it's sitting, is interfering with the Bluetooth to some degree. Now, this could be resolved by putting a little bit of space between the Mac and the chassis, maybe some pads or some sort of spacers. I haven't really had time to figure that much out yet, but what I've noticed is that when I'm using the Mac Studio, occasionally, it's not often, so it is actually sort of an intermittent thing, but occasionally the trackpad will become unresponsive or very slow to respond, and eventually indicate a lost connection. Or in the most common instance, when the computer first boots up, I will have to wait a little bit extra time before it recognizes that the keyboard and mouse are there. This used to be instant, and now I have to wait anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds for the computer to identify that. Now, I feel like this is because with it sitting on the metal and with the antenna band being actually part of the underside seam where the bottom of the Mac and the top of the Mac meet, that could be causing some issues. Like I said, I've been fighting two issues. I've fixed one, and this has been the other one, and I could probably figure this out by putting some spacers in there of some kind, but then I would have to sort of reconfigure how it's being held in place, so I'll actually put an update at some point on how that's going. But overall, those are my two issues with it, but everything else has been fantastic. So yeah, the Made in America thing, I know when I talk to other people they kind of roll their eyes, but it is sort of noticeable because I've messed with Chinese-made cheap Amazon Basics or whatever you want to call them, cable management rails, and they bend, they feel like they're just made out of pot metal. These feel really well made. So kudos to you guys, Oveo. You have made a really good product. And for you guys, if you're interested, I'll leave a link down below for each of them. And well, let's talk pricing. So in the case that you're interested, you know what you're getting in for. If you are interested in getting these, like I said, there will be a link down below, and the pricing starts at $29.99 for the cable management tray, $43.33, which is a really interesting repeating number pricing for the laptop stand. And I also realized looking at the website that I was actually putting my MacBook on the laptop stand wrong, and in fact, at work, my laptop is also on the stand wrong, so that's on me. Then lastly, of course, we have the star of the show, the Mac Studio mount, which is $75.99, which, if you think that's a little steep, that is totally fine, though I will say, looking at some of the competition, I found some plastic ones that were cheaper, and I found some metal ones that were a little bit cheaper and made out of thinner metal, like pot metal steel. Not great, and overall, things that were of the same quality were at or higher in price. So for me, I think that this is a really great deal. But that is entirely your call. I'm not here to sell you on it. I'm just here to talk about it. And for me, I am talking about how this is an extremely good piece of hardware, and I had a blast using it. So huge thanks to Oveo for sending me this hardware. Again, they sent it to me, but there was no compensation given. They're watching this video right alongside you, but I had a blast using this, and I'm going to continue using it. I mean, it's mounted to my desk for 30 minutes worth of effort. I should be able to get at least an extra 30 days worth of use, but probably more than that. I would guess more than that. It's built to make me think that it'll be more than that. Either way, with that, I have, I believe, concluded all the videos that I had planned for things that people have sent to me, and we're going to get back to some regular videos soon. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I will be down there for probably the first hour of this video being posted, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And again, like, subscribe, comment, the whole 9 yards, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.